Our Belgian Grand Prix F1 driver ratings. Okay, let's get into driver ratings then and begin with our boy, Logie Sarge. Sprint quali 13th, sprint race 16th, started the race in 18th and finished 17th. I'm going to go with a 5 out of 10. He was looking reasonably promising, actually, and he was only a few seconds off Albon, and then he got stuck behind Carlos Sainz. And that's unforgivable, because Carlos Sainz was driving a donkey at that point, a donkey with a hole in it. And it's a shame. It's not. I can't give him any lower than that. I think it's just one of those slightly unfortunate. I think he finished 7 seconds behind Albon, so yeah, average.
I have gone low. I've gone for a 4 out of 10. I thought this was going to be the one for points, and when you look at the result of finishing 16th in the sprint and 17th, it's not where I thought Williams would be. Yeah, I know their strategy was terrible, but it's just unfortunate. And yeah, it's a shame for Logie, because I thought this was going to be a good weekend, but it wasn't.
Alex Albon up next. Sprint quali 12th, sprint race 12th. Started the race in 15th and finished in 14th.
I've gone for a 6 out of 10. Another disappointing one for Williams. Albon's been really good this year, and I thought this would be, like I said with Logan Sargent, a track that would suit Williams, and this would be the points on the board. You know, we saw them flying past people on the straight, but yeah, it just didn't quite happen. And maybe if Albon had done a bit more of a qualifying masterclass, which we've seen from him a few times, then maybe they might have been able to do something.
I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Alex Albon. It was a tale of two halves, really, for that race. It looked like he was potentially going to finish up there in around 7th, and then just, yeah, the strategy was pretty washed. If you look at the front runners, they managed to extend the soft stint almost double the length of some of the cars further back. Now, I know some of them may be trying an undercut, trying to get out of the Carlos Sainz train, stuff like that, but it just didn't work out for them. But yeah, a 3-stop definitely was not the optimum strategy. Now, Daniel Ricciardo, sprint quali 11th, sprint race 10th, started the main race in 19th, finished 16th. I'm going to lock in a 3 out of 10 for Daniel Ricciardo. It was a struggle for him this weekend. I'm not even going to try and beat around the bush. I'm not even going to try and defend him. He was off the back of the pack, and perhaps it's some time away from changeable conditions and so on and so forth. But then the sprint race is where he performed, and the drier race is where he didn't perform. I don't know. It just didn't work out for Danny Rick, and he was one of the worst drivers, I think, out there on Sunday.
A weird race where he was just languishing at the back. The sprint race was much better. But I've gone for a 4 out of 10, just because the main race is the one that matters if you don't get any points in the sprint, and it is very hard to get a point in the sprint when it only goes up to the top 8.
We now go to his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda. Sprint quali 16th, sprint race 18th, started the main race in 11th and finished in 10th.
I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda, which might seem very high when he was absolutely washed in the sprint. But in the race, he was absolutely fantastic and had a brilliant start, and was very concerned he was going to drop down to his 11th, and we'd had a bit of deja vu from the start of the season. But no, held on for points and did brilliantly. I think a very good job from Yuki, and back to where a bit of hype that we saw at the start of the season from him.
That's really controversial, because I have gone for a 9 out of 10. He was really impressive. It looked so quick at the start. On the mediums as well, he was making some progress. And one of the only cars, I would say, that actually made the medium tyre work to some extent. Although hitting him on lap 9 seems reasonably early for a medium stint at the start, but of course it's heavy fuel. But 9 out of 10, I think, is very fair. Nico Hülkenberg now, sprint quali 20th, sprint race 17th, started from the pit lane, finished 18th. I'm going to have to give him a 3 out of 10 for this weekend. It felt like he was last at all times, whether it was in qualifying or whether it was both sets of qualifying. And then he obviously started from the pit lane and then finished 18th, which was the last of the runners as well. Just a very washed weekend, I think, both from Haas and maybe slightly from Nico as well.
I went for a 4 out of 10 for Hülkenberg, because it's such a shame, because these conditions, at the start of the weekend, you thought this is prime Hülkenberg conditions, wet, dry track. But yeah, had problems with the car and just an absolute stinker of a weekend. The biggest flop curse really hit hard on Haas.
Kevin Magnussen now, sprint quali 18th, finished the sprint in 14th, started the main race in 16th and finished 15th.
Gone for a 4 as well, even though Magnussen's done a bit better, but I think he should have done a bit better when Hülkenberg had some car issues. So yeah, 15th in the race is not great, but then it is Haas and they're incredibly washed.
They are very washed. I'm giving K-Mag a 5 out of 10. I think that he's had a straight down the middle kind of weekend. But yeah, it was a slightly more promising drive from K-Mag, but I mean, only finishing 15th is crazy, but that Haas is literally awful. So yeah, 5 out of 10, I think, for K-Mag. Lance Stroll now. Sprint quali 14th, finished the sprint in 11th, started the main race in 10th and finished 9th. Going to go with a 6 out of 10 for Lance. Yeah, it's just Lance. He just seems like he has kind of an all-right weekend and then picks up a few points. That's just kind of Lance Stroll in a nutshell, really. So 6 out of 10, I think, encapsulates that beautifully.
I think it does. 6 out of 10. You know, he scored a couple of points. The sprint didn't go to plan, but I think that was a very just weird call by Aston Martin anyway to put him out on the mediums right at the end of the session. Very odd choice. I do wonder where Aston Martin could end up in the constructors now.
We now go to Fernando Alonso. Sprint quali 15th, sprint race DNF, started 9th and finished 5th.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10, even though he's crashed in the sprint race. He's hanging on by a single point now to 3rd in the championship, but he's still there going into the summer break. And I think 5th is actually a very, very good result. If there was no sprint, I think it's like a 9, maybe even a 10, because I don't think he could have done any more in the race, but he's losing points because of the sprint.
That Fernando Alonso bias really shining through, trying to give a 10 out of 10 for a 5th place. Come on. I've gone for an 8 out of 10 as well for Fernando. I think that he had such a lonely race, which sometimes we then don't get eyeballs on exactly what he's doing or what he's up to, but he was just very relaxed in P5, and I think that's something that is testament to how well Fernando drove in that race. Valtteri Bottas now, sprint quali 17th, sprint race 13th, then started the main race in 13th, finished 12th. I think I'm going to give Valtteri a 7 out of 10. I'm more sort of judging this on the fact that Valtteri has now started to beat Zhou Guanyu in some regards, which is not what he has been doing all season. So you've got to give props to Valtteri for picking it back up. I think it was a solid drive for Valtteri, both in the sprint and in the main race, but just no points to show for it.
7 out of 10 as well. It's a good drive in a car that's, I believe, is not capable of points. And he was close to points. He was only 5 seconds off. So, yeah, it's a good drive from Valtteri, but 12th. Can't give any more than a 7 for that.
Zhou Guanyu now, sprint quali 19th, sprint race 15th, then started the main race in 17th and finished 13th.
Gone for a 5 for Zhou Guanyu's, just a bit of an anonymous weekend. Actually quite surprised he finished 13th, to be honest, because it seemed when I was looking he was quite low down the order, but yeah, just a bit of an anonymous race and not on Valtteri's pace.
I've gone for a 6 out of 10. I don't really know what's going on with Zhou Guanyu at the moment. It just seems like he's going off the boil slightly when in his current sort of phase of his career, has to be beating Valtteri Bottas week in, week out now, I would argue at this point. And to then sort of build momentum and get other teams to start talking about him. Oscar Piastri now, sprint quali 2nd, finished the sprint in 2nd, started 5th, and did not finish the main race. I'm going for an 8 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri for this weekend. The thing that impresses me the most is his nerves of steel to deliver that sprint quali 2nd place when he's never been on the podium. He's never run as high as that. He was leading the race for a little while. And again, driving around Spa that he hasn't done for 3 years, changeable conditions, it threw everything at him. And you know, whatever you think of that lap 1, turn 1 incident in the main race, everything else was really, really good. I can't give him a 9 because we didn't actually see how the main race went, but 8's a solid one for me.
I've gone even more generous for Piastri. I've gone for a 9 out of 10, which may sound absolutely insane when he's made 3 corners in the main race, if that. But his sprint was incredible. Sprint quali was incredible. His main qualifying, you know, he's beaten Lando in everything, like all weekend. I firmly believe he would have beaten Lando in the race as well had he not had the incident. I think it's going to be very exciting to see how he does against Lando. I wouldn't be surprised now if he has the odd weekend where he's beating Lando.
Lando Norris now, sprint quali 5th, finished the sprint in 6th, and then started the main race in 7th and finished 7th.
I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Lando. Not a particularly great weekend, but it's kind of a solid points haul. I don't think the McLaren was set up particularly well for the race. So yeah, started 7th, finished 7th. I'm going to give him a 7.
And I'm going to give him a 7 as well. Yeah, it did feel like a slightly off weekend for Lando. That mistake in sprint quali, which potentially cost him maybe starting on the front row. And we need to mention his comeback because I don't think any of us thought he was going to score points sort of halfway through the race, I would say. So 7 out of 10. Pierre Gasly now, sprint quali 6th, finished the sprint race in 3rd, and then started the race in 12th and finished 11th. I'm going for an 8 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. I think he was so unlucky in the main race to be stuck behind Piastri, who was going at 40 miles an hour up Eau Rouge, and everyone was just steaming past him. Otherwise, he may well have scored some decent points. The sprint race was obviously amazing, so big shout out to Pierre Gasly for that. But yeah, an impressive, I'd say, overall weekend for Gasly.
Yeah, definitely gone for an 8 out of 10. Really good in that sprint. Bagged a load of points, and then, he was so unfortunate.
Absolutely. Well done to the drivers that were stuck behind Piastri, because I can only imagine they were chomping at the bit to try and get past.
It's a miracle that no one else got damaged or anything in that. Yeah.
Esteban Ocon now, sprint quali 9th, sprint race 9th, started 14th, and then finished 8th.
Gone for a 7 for Ocon. I think he was the slower of the Alpine drivers. And boy, do we have to talk about that move on Tsunoda. It was an absolute beaut. And it was millimeters. And I think the fact that we saw it live on board as well made it even more kind of like make you step back. It was very nice from Ocon.
I've gone for a 7 as well. That move was move of the season, in my opinion. That was sensational. And he came alive at the end on the soft tyres. And one more lap, I think he would have finished 7th. Had he done that, I would have given him an 8 out of 10 as well, I think. But just missed out on that, and therefore a 7 out of 10. Lewis Hamilton now, sprint quali 7th, finished the sprint in 7th, then started the race in 3rd and finished 4th. I have gone for an 8 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton this weekend. Obviously missed out in the sprint because of George Russell getting in the way, and also as well, I'm not just going to apportion blame to George here, but also that was on Mercedes, I would say, in some ways as well. And then in the race, didn't manage to get Leclerc, but was close pretty much throughout. Stole the fastest lap at the end. And a solid drive from Lewis. 8 out of 10.
I got for a 9 out of 10 for Hamilton. The more I watch the incident as well in the sprint, the more I think that it shouldn't have been a penalty. And he's very unfortunate. And without that, he's getting 2 very good results.
We now go to George Russell. Started sprint quali in 10th, finished the sprint in 8th, started the race in 8th and finished 6th.
I've gone for a 6 out of 10. I think it's maybe flown under the radar how mediocre Russell's been in the last few races, maybe even this season. And then obviously, had that moment where George overtook Hamilton in qualifying and then ruined his lap as well, which still makes me think that if Mercedes did ever sort their car out, that these two would be tripping over each other and make Max Verstappen just the champion anyway.
I've also gone for a 6 out of 10 for George. His actual race was pretty solid. He pulled off a one-stop strategy, which is pretty awesome considering there was no heavy fuel running in the dry at all. So there was no data going into that, and he really made that work. And yes, I think George is performing under Lewis Hamilton's current sort of benchmark, but George is still getting points, and therefore we can't give him too horrible of a grade. Let's now go to Carlos Sainz, who did the sprint quali in 3rd, finished the sprint race in 4th, and then started 4th, and did not finish. I am going to go for a 5 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. I just, we go back to that incident, and I'm very surprised actually that he's come out and said that he thinks it was Oscar's fault and it's a lack of experience and this, that, and the other. When we keep speaking about that change of direction he did, the very aggressive change of direction, and Yeah, I don't think Carlos even knew Oscar was there, to be honest with you. I think that's another thing, is that if he had awareness that the McLaren was on the inside of that apex, I don't think he would have turned in as much. So I think the awareness was slightly lacking from Carlos.
My rating is a 4 out of 10. It's all right for Carlos to say Oscar shouldn't have been there, but he was always running the risk of getting damaged by doing something so unexpected, of like changing your line so dramatically. Caught people out. It's self-inflicted, really, his DNF, so 4 out of 10.
Charles Leclerc now, sprint quali 4th, finished the sprint race in 5th, started the main race from 1st and finished 3rd.
Gone for a 9 out of 10. I think it would be a 10 if it was just a race, because there's nothing more he could do in the race. I think the sprint maybe could have done a bit better. He could well have easily been second in the sprint, and then we're getting a 10 here. So, but it's a 9 out of 10. In the terms of the race, perfect from him.
I've also gone for a 9 out of 10. The main race was brilliant. To hold off Hamilton was great. He sort of withstood the pressure all race long. Couldn't do anything about the Red Bulls. Never could. No chance. Shame that Perez got him immediately. I would have liked to have seen how long he would have maybe kept on in front of him than more than one lap. I'm really glad I only got to see Charles Leclerc leading for 3 corners. But maybe we'll get 4 corners next time he's on pole. Let's see. Sergio Perez now, sprint quali 8th. Did not finish the sprint race. Started the main race in 2nd and finished 2nd. I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Sergio Perez. A much better weekend overall. The collision with Hamilton, I don't think Hamilton deserved the penalty, but I'm not really going to blame Perez for it. It was just an unfortunate incident, and also very unfortunate for him to sustain such damage. He's not on the level of Max for whatever reason anymore. He was right at the beginning of the season, but I think 8 out of 10 still. He finishes 2nd, better than what he's been doing in the previous months gone by.
I've gone for a 7 out of 10. I know he's not on Max's level, but when he was in the lead and Max took quite a few laps to get past Charles, I can't believe Perez didn't pull a gap and get away potentially, which would have helped him a bit more. It's still a good drive, but I think it's an 8 out of 10 without the sprint, and I think there is part to blame for his sprint DNF, and also qualified poorly in the sprint again, which has put him in the mid-pack.
Well, look at that disagreement.
Well,
let us know. Let us know in the comments or wherever you are what you think, and is Perez at fault? I feel like I might win that one.
You threw me under the bus bit there by saying I thought it was Perez's fault. I'm not saying it's Perez's fault. I think he can have some of the blame and has to manage risk versus reward.
Max Verstappen now, sprint quali 1st, sprint race 1st, started the race in 6th, finished 1st.
Max Verstappen, 10 out of 10 again. Made it look so easy. It doesn't matter where he starts. He still can win the race. And yeah, it's another perfect weekend and another 10. Yeah,
10 out of 10. Unreal. Unbelievable. We are witnessing history. Really unbelievable from Verstappen once again. To take the lead on lap 17 so easily. Just rocked up to the back of Perez. Both of them on new mediums. Like Perez was on 50-lap-old hard tyres and Max was on 1-lap-old softs. That's what it looked like. He was almost pushing Perez around the track before he passed, and he's just on another level. So you have to commend him. It's not just the car. Perez is showing it's not just the car. It is man and machine. So well done, Verstappen. And that leads us quite nicely into who is our P1. And of course, it has to be, because the only driver that got 10 out of 10 this week is Max Verstappen. Congratulations, Max, on another award to go with all the other awards you've been winning. 45 wins now. He is 8 wins away from Sebastian Vettel's 53-win tally, which means he will most likely beat that this year if he continues this run of form.
Outrageous. Yeah, P1, Max Verstappen, like you say, who's the only one that we've given a 10 to. And it's fully deserved. Yeah, well done, Max. I'm sure who is P1 in the Belgian Grand Prix trophy is going to sit
don't break it
in front of don't break it. We'll send you a little award. Yeah, good times indeed. Is it good times?
no, it's anything but. Just smile through the pain and the tears, but it's fine. But that is it. Thank you everybody for the support, for watching along and listening along to our F1 driver rating series and everything else that we've been doing. Of course, as I say, we're not leaving you alone over these next 4 weeks. Of course, the uploads will slow down a slight bit, but we will still keep you entertained. Do not worry about that. And Tom Bellingham, what are your final thoughts for the final time for 4 weeks?
My final thoughts are, I didn't hear a word you said about Max Verstappen's race because Frank spotted a cat in the garden and was barking, but I'm sure you said he did a good race.
I wonder. Amazing things, don't worry. I would never say bad things about your boy, unless he takes out Charles Leclerc. And that is it. Thank you, everybody, once again, and we'll see you very soon for another piece of content. Bye!
Bye!
Matt Gallagher has shut down for 4 weeks.
Bye.